Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. To date, right now, I've done exactly one Harbor Freight video, and that video is taken off like wildfire. Apparently, Harbor Freight is, in my little world here, one of the most searched terms on YouTube, and I've got good news for you guys. Like everybody else, I've got a ton of crap from Harbor Freight, and I actually have been wanting to work on this very thing right here from Harbor Freight for like 15 months. I bought this thing. If you don't know, this is a Harbor Freight three-tier. I think they call it a three-tier shop cart, or it might be called a three-tier tool cart. I'm not sure. I'll look it up. But I've had this thing since August 2018. And ever since I got it, it's become a workhorse of the channel and of the garage. It always looks like this. It is always full of garbage, which is one of the problems I've got right now. Is I'm gonna have to clean this off in a second so we can finish performing some upgrades to it. What I will tell you is an initial impression. It's that this thing is built cheap, but it's also financially cheap. I'm not sure if it was 50 bucks. It was somewhere in that range, but it's been great for me. I'll get the thing cleaned off and we'll talk more about it. But since that first Harbor Freight video is taken off like wildfire, and I don't do this a lot in my videos, but if you guys like these kind of videos and these kind of reviews and stuff, leave a comment, drop a like, become a subscriber. I'd love to have you. I make videos like this all the time. So I actually just finished completely editing my video, and I ran over to the Harbor Freight website to see what they actually call this thing. I don't exactly remember. And I did something I don't do immediately before I make a review, and that is read the reviews of other people on whatever I'm talking about. There's like I don't know, 1,100 or so reviews on this thing on the Harbor Freight website. And most of them are positive. They're basically going to mimic the comments that you'll hear me make later in the video. But there were about 50, something like that, from people who say this thing's like super wobbly and unstable. And I wasn't in their shop to see what was going on when they put it together and the parts that we're working with, so I don't want to say they were doing something wrong, but I'm totally going to say they were doing something wrong. For a lot of you guys out there, this won't be any kind of new information, but when you put something together that's all bolted loosely together like this, or IKEA furniture that's all pinned together or whatever, just something that's all rickety and crappy until you actually tighten it all up, you want to put all this stuff in finger tight, get this thing sitting on a level surface, and then tighten your fasteners. As this thing is right now, it's like rock solid. The floor in my garage has like a 3-degree slope in it. It's sitting catty corner, and since I've already completed what you're gonna see, it has 4 swivel casters on it too, and this thing is not wobbly whatsoever. So, pro tip guys, when you're putting together a piece of junk like this, put everything in it loose, give the corners a good smack before you tighten it all down, and then tighten it, and it'll be fine. Knowing that my floor in the garage and the driveway and everything else all slopes downward, I built this in my living room because that was the most level floor, and it was brand new. It wasn't dirty or anything, so it was fine. So food for thought, guys. Don't handicap yourself just by getting in a hurry or reading those negative reviews of this that all say it's wobbly, because that's just not true. So there it is, all cleaned up. Well, cleaned up. I don't know if I said it before or not, but I've had this thing for like 15, 16 months. I don't like to talk about stuff that's brand new because anybody can go open a brand new box and tell you how awesome something new is. I want to actually work with something for a while before I express an opinion to you guys. I want to have time to form that opinion. But this review isn't going to be so much about this particular Harbor Freight cart, because if you go to the store and look at one of these things, you pretty much know what you're getting. It's made out of probably 22 gauge sheet metal. It's painted with just like regular paint and probably not all that great. Like there are runs all over it if you look at it. It's pretty typical Harbor Freight quality stuff. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. There's nothing particularly right with it. So with that explained, the whole reason I bought this thing was as an organizational aid. The reason I say this thing is an organizational aid for me is because I can put all the tools I need for a particular job in the top of the cart and a whole bunch of crap like you saw before. I can put new parts on the second shelf and used parts on the third shelf and just wheel it up and start going. That's something I've never really had. I don't have a good shop layout to be able to like run back and forth to my toolbox all the time. Or if you guys are professional mechanics, maybe you wheel your toolbox up to a car, but most of the pros I met have toolboxes so big that you need a forklift to move them. So I'm going to guess it's the same thing there where you're always back and forth. So for my whole life, I started working on stuff by myself, 25 years ago at this point. I would always just lay tools up on the cowl or, on fender wells and on air cleaners and crap like that. And, it's stuff you really don't want to do. Case in point, this Craftsman extension spent some period of its life laying on the cowl of a car out in the weather because I forgot to grab it and put it away. Stuff you don't want to be doing, especially if you take mechanic work seriously. Particularly if you have customers, you don't want to be doing stuff like this. That said, I am not a professional mechanic. I did not cross-shop premium brands of stuff like this. The Harbor Freight was going to be fine for my uses, and it has been. It's been great. There are a few problems with it. You'll see straight away that I have performed some upgrades to it already, and we're going to perform one more important one while we're here. But I'd say the single biggest problem with the thing is all these corners right here and these exposed bolts on it. So you can see all this stuff's just razor sharp up through here. These corners, they're actually not that sharp, but they're sharp enough. And the thing with a rolling cart is it rolls. You don't want this thing bouncing up against your car and putting big scratches in it and stuff with all these sharp corners. And I'm certainly not going to take this foam off to show you all of them, but you get the idea what I'm saying here. You want to be able to protect things. And if you actually look at the foam I've used here, when it's compressed, which it never is, it just naturally stays kind of that shape. When it's compressed, it's just still slightly thicker than these edges. So even if you were to run this thing pretty hard up into a car or a wall or something, you're not going to have any problem there. And all that is I think 3-inch pipe insulation. Maybe it might be bigger than that. I'm not sure. I can probably look through my online purchases and see, because I buy practically everything online, which is going to come back to haunt us in this story. And I just zip tied it onto all 4 corners, so no problem. And that leads me to the next obvious problem with this thing, as it's delivered or shipped, however you want to say it, from Harbor Freight, is there's supposed to be a handle on this thing. I take handles off of my toolboxes and stuff too when they make them wider, because I don't need it. I can just grab the cart and take off with it. And the handle that they want you to bolt onto this thing is also super sharp, so it's be this sharp bar sticking out here off the end of it that you're just going to run into stuff and scratch up your car and put dents in your wall and all that crap. So I never installed it and just threw it out. But I would have done that with any one of these carts I would have bought. And in fact, that's one of the motivating reasons that I did not buy one of the like nylon or plastic versions of these carts. Although I believe they probably are better. I didn't want to have to like cut that handle off. And for twice as much money, why should I take a saw to something when this will do? And one of the primary reasons I was even considering one of those plastic ones is because I was concerned about how these are put together. I was concerned these nuts and bolts would be loose all the time and the thing would be all rattly and crap. And they're really not. I just blasted the thing together with my Milwaukee electric ratchet here. I didn't really pay any particular concern to how loose or tight anything was. It just kind of went until the ratchet stopped. It's been fine. I figured that rolling around the shop and everything else that it would be all wobbly by now. It really isn't. I didn't Loctite them or anything. So, and that was actually something I had thought I'd have to do, would be go back over these and Loctite them, and nope, no problems. So really that's all I have to really say about the whole Harbor Freight end of this cart. Is this video is really more about why I wanted this concept. It didn't have to be this tool cart, but in this budget for a guy at home, I think this thing's just great. If you think you want one, it'll be great. I've stacked tons of weight on this thing. I'm not sure what its weight rating actually is. On a bunch of my videos, you'll see me throw a sheet of cardboard over the top of it, and I actually kind of use it as a bench. You could probably put a piece of plywood over the top of it and actually do that. My complaints with it are really just how sharp the corners are, and that's probably true of any one of these things you buy, unless they come with corner protectors of some kind. And one issue I really hate with this thing, which is about me, not it, is it only has swivel casters at one end, and it is super aggravating for me. So every time I grab this thing, yeah, I just did it. Every time I grab this thing, I instinctively grab the end that doesn't turn. So it only swivels on one side. I want swivel casters on all 4 corners, so I can just grab this thing any which way and just take off with it. I'm not sure if in the long run that's going to be a mistake, if this thing's going to become unwieldy to use, if it's just going to start trying to run away every time I touch it or anything, but I don't think so. And if I'm wrong, I can always put it back. So what I'm going to do right now then is I'm going to go ahead and put swivel casters on the other side of it. I told you that buying this thing online kind of bit me in the butt. Harbor Freight always sells stuff by lot numbers, so if you look at an item in their catalog, it'll say like 10 different lot numbers for the same thing. And that's because they buy these in lot quantities. They'll order 100,000 of these or 10,000 of them or whatever from whatever factory one day, and that factory is going to put them together as cheaply as they possibly can. I mean, this is all Chinese crap, and they're not going to sweat the small details. Well, the casters that this one came with are some funky base plate size and bolt pattern that are difficult to find. I can find them, but they're like $30 a piece, so they're more than the cost of the cart. How I discovered this is I went down to Harbor Freight, because Harbor Freight sells casters too, And I went up to the one of these that was on display and eyeballed up the caster plate and everything, and went over to the caster aisle, put a caster in my hand, walked back to the cart. I'm like, yep, these are the right thing. They were like $6 a piece. And bought them and brought them home, and they're the wrong bolt pattern for this particular cart. Now granted, I could re-drill the bolt pattern in this thing, but they've got these fairly lightly welded on support pieces. I don't really want to disturb them. Plus drilling sheet metal is always not much fun, and then I'm going to damage the paint so it'll start rusting, and then I'm probably going to end up with extra holes in the bottom of my cart, and I don't want stuff falling out of it. So I just went online and bought the closest thing I could get, and we're going to try and like hillbilly our way along into making those bolt into kind of the same holes without hopefully disturbing too much stuff. And you guys can see these casters I came up with, the whole width spacing is correct, but the plates are too short. So I'm just going to try to kind of use some big fender washers to like sandwich them in, and we'll see how it works out. But the first thing we got to do is get the old casters off. And I'm just going to do them one side at a time in case this all goes wrong. It looks like the first thing that's going to go wrong is this wrench is too big to actually fit in there. Awesome. Socket fits. Freaking weird, man. I spoke too soon. Socket kind of fits. There we go. What a piece of junk. One remove. So these we're not going to have that problem with, at least because they swivel. So now you guys can see what I'm talking about with the bolt pattern. So what I'm going to try and do to get around that is I'm just going to use these two as regular bolt holes, and then I'm just going to put the bolts back in with like giant fender washers on this side and see if we can basically just pin it in. So yeah, giant fender washer. And I had bought longer nuts and bolts. We'll see if we actually need them. I don't think we will. I think this will be fine. Installation, reverse of removal. And there we go. Both on there. Let's flip it over and give it a test drive. Oh yes. Yes. Daddy likes it. The most important thing I wanted to accomplish is that we can four-wheel drift our cart now. And that's absolutely amazing. Want to be able to grab it and just go with it. So, mission accomplished. And see, no extra holes. Nothing's going to fall through the bottom of the cart through the old holes. We didn't have to plug anything up. Plus now we can make really arty dolly shots like all the cool kids with the world's most bumpy camera dolly. Ooh. We have one other issue to take care of on this thing. I want to fix my corner bumper problems here at the bottom. At the top, the bumpers worked out just fine, but at the bottom, there's nothing to zip tie it to in the bottom, and they're starting to come out a little too far, and they're actually starting to rip off. So to fix that, I'm going to use one of my favorite things ever, CA glue. I'm going to have an entire video about this stuff coming out before too long, but the short version here is that this stuff is super glue. It's just good super glue. So what I'm going to do is just apply some CA glue. Probably not to the fastener heads, but like back here. So I think I'm just going to put a little dot right here. Actually, I'm going to do something I've always kind of wanted to try, but never have. I'm just going to put a dot, decent sized dot, on the back of that. We're going to eyeball it up to where I believe it's going to live. And I'm going to spray the activator right on the cart. And then we're just going to put it on there and hold it. And I can smell it. This stuff has a super sweet smell, which is also super toxic. So I'm pretty sure it's activating. Just hold it there for a little while. The next thing will be to see if the foam is actually strong enough to hold the glue. It might just rip right away. And that didn't do anything. Yeah, actually it stuck to the cart. Awesome, didn't stick to the foam at all. So that's a fail. What I think I'm going to try instead is just hot glue, which almost never works for anything. And the good news there is I can't find my hot glue gun. I just have a crappy like Ace Hardware on clearance hot glue gun that wouldn't hold your grandma's bird feeder together anyway. So I am going to go see what like an industrial actual hot glue gun costs and see if we can just do that. So I'm not priced out of an industrial grade glue gun, but they aren't cheap. And the only one that I know is good is a 3M one that's like $200 and something. So then I started thinking about it and I thought, hey, why don't we do the same thing we do every night, Pinky? Try some JB Weld. So mixed up a small amount, and I've made no effort to prep any of this. We're just going to try and stick it on, see what we get, and if that ends up holding, I'll actually pull the sides of this in with some clamps and stuff and clamp it down, and we'll try that way. Plus, it is so cold in the shop right now, I can just barely get JB Weld to even stir up, so I'm not thinking it's going to cure very quickly, so we'd probably have to take this stuff in the house and just do it in the kitchen, which is great because nobody's going to stop me. So I'm just going to let that go until tomorrow evening, and we'll see if I can just come out and rip it right off. If it sticks pretty well, then we know what we're going to do. So I was out here this morning and didn't do a whole lot more than just poke our little sample piece here, just touched it and it broke right off the JB Weld. And the JB Weld is nice and firmly adhered to the cart. So what I think I'm going to do with these corners next is to stop making problems that don't exist. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this thing is one of the workhorses in my shop. I use it non-stop, so playing around with glue forever and buying a $200 glue gun and all that kind of crap just isn't in the cards right now. I don't need to worry about it, and I really don't think our little bumper situation at the bottom there is really going to affect anything anyway. If those things come off, we've still got full corner protection the whole way down, and if it ever does annoy me, I've got another plan. We can try something else, but just gluing them on, I'm done with that. So as always, guys, I really appreciate you stopping in, and we'll catch you on the next one. I'm Max, that's Saddington Bear, and we make videos like this all the time. Here are a couple links to some other videos we've made, and we really appreciate you guys stopping in.